Hello and welcome to Blitzby Today. My name is Monica Krimendahl and I am here with my business partner, Rick Hayhurst.
Hi, friends. Thanks for being here.
And today we are excited. We are going to interview Dr. Joseph, and we are going to have a fun conversation. He has a 40-year history in aging as a psychologist and a manager of mental health practices. He was awarded the first contracts from the California Department of Aging in 1982 to develop mental health training for the state's nursing homes. And for 16 years, he was the clinical leader for a large mental health practice where he oversaw mental health programs for patients in hundreds of nursing homes in 8 different states. He is the past president of psychologists in long-term care and former board member of a national consortium of geropsychology training programs. That's a hard word for me, geropsychology. He is the author of the Handbook of Health and Behavior, Living Longer is the New Normal, and other publications. For over 3 decades, he has presented to caregiver groups, healthcare professionals, and senior organizations. The Concept Healthcare, known as CoHealth, is his former company, and he named to emphasize the importance of behavioral health concepts in the care of older adults. And then in 2018, he extended his professional interest in aging and began his new venture, the Living to 100 Club. And that's what we want to talk about today. Thanks so much for being with us, Dr. Joe.
Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome, Monica. Thanks for the invitation. I look forward to this conversation with you both. Yeah.
Beautiful. So I'm so excited because even before this, we were having conversations about how many people that we know are aging and how many people want to age gracefully. And I always tell the story that I want to be 100 and I still want to be able to do yoga. So it is about that aging gracefully. And I love what you're up to. And would just like you tell us a little bit, like take us backward and bring us back to how did you even get into this field?
Sure. Yeah, I started working with older adults shortly after I got licensed, as I started in the early 80s working on a geropsychiatric unit, which was an inpatient unit for psychiatric patients, senior psychiatric patients. And then I got this contract awarded. A colleague and I wrote this training manual for nursing homes on mental health topics. And then Medicare came along and changed the reimbursement and for the first time allowed for psychologists to get reimbursed for mental health services to seniors, Medicare beneficiaries. So that's when we started our group. It was a group practice and we hired psychologists and we contracted with nursing homes. And, I loved it because I learned so many things about this population. And frankly, the opportunity to help other mental health professionals intervene and support the depressed person and adjustment disorders. It just was really an uplifting experience for me. And I did that for, as you said, 16 years. And then I had my own company for a few years. And then I sold that and started my Living to 100 Club. And that's where, the nursing home work was great. It was rewarding, but it was also difficult and dealing with Medicare and managed care and HMOs and just a lot of hurdles to get over. But I started Living to 100 Club to apply a lot of what I learned to the consumer, people still living in the community, living at home, looking at ways to age well and, get over those hurdles. I talk about successful aging and managing the setbacks because we know it's not a smooth road. That, it's not a well-paved road and there's always going to be bumps. So my thing is, how do we face those obstacles and how do we get around them, get over them, go around, underneath, whatever it takes to move forward. And to me, successful aging is not just living longer. It is partly, of course, and my Living to 100 Club is partly, the idea that Living to 100 is a great destination, but to me, it's more of a mindset. And what does aging mean to me and how do I keep moving forward because we know living to 100 is not in the cards for everyone. We know that. But let's stay positive while trying. That's my thing. Yeah.
Just amazing. As you're talking, I'm thinking through my head for sure about my family and my father who has Parkinson's. And just as I watch him age, and then actually as I watch what he says, as I listen to, how he is speaking about the aging process versus the way that my mother is talking about it. So it's just an interesting dance to really listen to what you're talking about with that, the mindset part of it and what we're telling ourselves about it, and then seeing that play out. So I love what you're up to. So tell me a little bit about, give me a story. Like I want to hear a story about someone who's come into the program and learned some things from you and what happened at the end.
Yeah. Well, I like to talk about, people that I worked with in the nursing home. In the most recent years, a couple of stories. I'll call him Ralph. Ralph was a professional boxer. Spent his whole career as a boxer in the ring, and he developed diabetes, advanced diabetes, and some severe circulatory problems, cardiovascular problems. So he had to have his leg amputated. And Ralph was saying, how can I go on? I'm a professional boxer. My body is now missing an important, limb, and I'm not the same. And about 3 months later, he had to have his second leg amputated. And he had the same questions. And I was working with Ralph, and my message to Ralph was, look, your worth does not depend on your body. Our worth is independent of how strong or how weak we are, or how advanced physically, or how much we decline. Our worth is independent of that. And it doesn't matter what's going on with your body. And I always, tell people we are not our bodies, because what goes on in our head is very different from what's going on in our body. And it's a little bit of an Eastern Zen kind of thing, I think, but there is that separation unless dementia comes into the picture, because then whatever's going on in the mind is really skewed, and that's a different conversation. But when the body starts to decline, we can't equate that decline mentally with our own consciousness. So, for me, it's helping people understand how they interpret these events that happen to them. I had another patient who had a terrible stroke, and she was bedridden for almost a year. And I would work with her for about 6 months. And, I called her captain because I wanted her to understand she's the captain of her ship, and her body's the ship, but she's the captain. And, I'd walk in every week and say, Captain, how you doing? How you doing? And one week I walked in and I said, Captain, how was your week? And she said, well, the ship ran aground. She was out with the physical therapist on walking with her walker, and she fell. And she said, I had to turn the ship around and get back up. And to me, it's that motivation and determination that pushes us through these rough spots. So, and that's what I do when I coach individuals, because they might have a loss, maybe a fall and a hip fracture, and they're not able to walk anymore, or maybe they have to give up their car keys, or maybe they're in a wheelchair. Whatever's going on, there's still a way to mentally get that motivation back and that determination. So that's what I love to talk about with seniors.
Yeah, the stories are so real for me. I can see the boxer, and I can, feel the story about that. And then when you're talking about how she righted the ship, and that's so beautiful too. And I just love how it isn't about this thing that we're, this thing that we're encapsulated in. It's really about the story that we're telling ourselves. And when she was able to say, the ship ran aground, she was able to actually make some jokes about it and not take the whole thing so seriously. And because of the support that you gave her, she was able to actually, it sounds like, transform what happened into just, this is what is right now. And so this is what is.
Yeah, that's so well put, Monica, because it's all about getting in touch with that fire inside. And people call it different things. The common word today is resilience or grit. I call it fire and determination because it's always there. And when you're working with anybody who's struggling or maybe, depressed or despondent or feeling helpless, that fire is still there, and you gotta connect with it, and you gotta unlock it, you gotta release it, because that's what allows them to dig deep and really push forward. So and I always tell people, look, nobody can take that away from you. Don't let anybody try to say, no, mom, slow down, or you can't. This is your strength, this is your determination, your fire, and don't let anybody try to take it from you, especially your doctors. I think doctors do that a lot. Adult children, spouses, relatives, friends, neighbors. Don't let anybody get in your way. It's your fire. You work with it. Yeah.
Right on, right on. So Joe, take us back to being a younger man. So as you were thinking about your grandparents and enjoying your grandparents, I'm assuming you had grandparents. Did you have grandparents?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so, and as you were experiencing your grandparents, was there like a moment in time where you saw age? Did you notice age when you were a younger man, or not really?
Well, I didn't know my maternal grandparents. My grandfather died when he was a young man, I think before I was born. And the grandmother on my mother's side, I knew a little bit, but on my father's side, and what I remember about both my grandmother and grandfather on my father's side, they were both Italian, born in Italy, and moved to the U.S. first to Pennsylvania, and then they settled in upstate New York, where I was born. And I just saw their work ethic. That's what struck me the most. My grandfather was in construction, a mason and builder, and my father did the same thing. And he didn't slow down. He, like my father, they didn't slow down as they got into their 70s and 80s. Yeah, eventually, of course, but it's like age didn't come into the picture. Age was just a number, and that's what I learned from them. It didn't matter. And I see this today, and I tell people age is only a number, because people who are 60 can be very old, and people who are 90 can seem very young. Don't get caught up in that chronological age. The mental age and health age is much more important than chronological age. Yeah. So for me, age was, it didn't get in the way. That's what I remember. Yeah.
So great. I was with my father last week. He'll be 80 in March, and he retired young and has been engaged in projects since, volunteering for Habitat for Humanity, volunteering for a tax organization for 15 years, managing 3 locations, and all volunteering. And then recently his volunteer work has slowed down, and he's approaching 80 in March. And he said to me, I'm just sitting too much. I'm just sitting too much. It's not good for me. I need to be out there. I need to be physical. I need to be active. And he's a retired engineer, good mind, the whole thing. And I was so touched by it, to be quite honest. And my mother's going to be 79 next year. And same, she's just in the world, engaged, working, volunteering, doing all of that, never sits down. And so I feel pressure, Joe, as a younger person, to stay busy, to stay active.
Yeah, but take some deep breaths and
and you'll be just fine, won't you?
take off for a couple of days and then get back into it. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
We've learned so much about older adults, the centenarians. If you're familiar with the blue zones, these are geographic areas around the world where demographers found that people are living into their hundreds, well over 100. And then there are 6, and they found a lot of characteristics that were in common in all of these blue zones. And the number one was that they were physical. They stayed busy. They didn't go to a gym. They didn't have gyms. They didn't run marathons. They didn't bowling and tennis. They were physical. They did gardening. They walked to town. They walked up steps and down steps and stayed physical. That was part of their mindset, again, on how to live longer. Not that that was their goal, but it just was natural. So I admire people. Retirement is great, but let's not, sit around and, watch television, because there's a lot of new things that we can take on. Like your father wants to, continue to be active. And I admire that. New jobs, maybe new volunteer positions, learning new language, going back to school. I bought myself a set of drums 6 months ago, electronic drums, not acoustic. So only I hear it with my headset on. But I never played a music instrument in my life. And, I'm trying to teach myself how to play the drums. Very frustrating, but I love it. I just love it. Yeah. So we got to stay busy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned stairs, sorry, Monica. You mentioned stairs. My great grandmother, who I was mentioning earlier, lived to be 105, and she was taking stairs. Her bedroom was upstairs and the laundry was in the basement. And she was living with my grandmother at the time. And my grandmother said, "Would you like to have your bedroom downstairs?" And she said, "No, no, I need to take the stairs." "Well, Mom, did you want me to take the laundry downstairs?" "Nope, nope. I can do it. I need to take the stairs." And that is the mindset. And she lived so long. So just lovely to hear you coming behind that, just staying physical, and not making that a project of going to the gym, but rather just living.
Just living. That's right. And being physical and gardening and doing whatever we can out, outdoors, indoors, but steps, stairways, downstairs, upstairs. Yeah. It's all part of the same picture. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you're talking, I'm thinking, like, you are the expert with the geriatric population. So I'm thinking for myself, what is the difference between working in psychology with the mind with an older person than with someone, in their 40s and 50s?
Yeah, a lot of common things, of course, questions about identity and worth and value and performance and being accepted. But I think the one thing that separates the two age groups is really the notion as we age that there are stereotypes. We call it ageism. And I mentioned this very early in our conversation today, but there used to be this kind of concern. Oh, gee, I'm getting old. That means I have to slow down. That means I have to, I'm going to be dependent. I'm going to be helpless. And middle-aged adults aren't concerned about that. They have other concerns, just as valid, but different. And the senior is saying, gee, I'm going to have to, stop driving, or I'm not going to be so independent. I'm going to become helpless and all of that. And these are what I call self-limiting beliefs that has nothing to do with that person. It's just what kind of comes in these big pictures of aging. And the good thing is that's going away. There's less of that today, and not it's still around. You can still see some of those ageist attitudes, but the great thing is that the person who's still jogging in his 90s, or she's still playing tennis in her 80s or 90s, that's not the exception anymore. That's becoming the norm. That's becoming the rule. And we hear about it all the time. We hear about these people who are just continuing to do things that you wouldn't expect somebody in their 70s or 80s or 90s to do. That's to me, that's the positive development. All this work that people have been doing to market aging as a positive development, it's starting to pay off. Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes a big difference, because as we see all that positive in the news, and as we see people who are doing it, it actually creates for, like, I was listening to my father, and it actually created a place for him to stand, that he could say, there's somebody doing that out there. So that might mean that I can do it too. And so those positive role models are just really, really important to be able to show what is possible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's perfect. Because look at somebody like Rita Moreno. She's been in the news because she's in this new movie of West Side Story that Steven Spielberg did. And I just read an article about it. She's 90 years old. And who cares how old she is? But she's just got this kind of vibrancy about her. And don't get in my way, because I'm going to keep doing what I think is important. And that's the perfect role model. I agree. And your father's got the right idea. whatever it is that out there, I can do the same. I can do it too.
Yeah, so great. When I was a youngster, I spent 3 weeks with my grandparents, and I remember always feeling so close to that age group. And even today, still, I just love that age group. Now I'm closer to that age group. So it's, I don't know if something's changed in the relationship, but I still see it as a young 15-year-old, like I just love that aging population. What I love more is meeting you and hearing from you that there is absolute and real measurable guidance for people aging, and a framework for them to look at aging differently. I appreciate you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Thank you. It's sometimes it's like starting a new chapter. Some event happens and our life looks completely different from the way it was yesterday. And yeah, maybe a spouse dies after 40, 50 years of marriage, and we say, I can't go on without my spouse. The future is too dark. Well, there is some grief and, process time to get through that and deal with the loss. But then we start new chapters. Then we start creating a new definition of who we are. And I always say, don't let yesterday define who we are today. It's wide open. It's a blank screen. We can create whatever we want. And that's part of that mindset about, looking forward, celebrating aging, looking forward to that. So it's a blank screen. We can write whatever script we want. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. I love that. I love that, because that gives it allows the past to be the past, and it allows us to create whatever we want now. So we can look into the present and into the future and say, okay, so that was then, this is now. What do we want to put on that blank screen? Like you said, what are the possibilities? And as we have conversations with people like you and find organizations like yours, the possibilities can actually show up for people, maybe in ways that they never even thought of or never saw as a possibility for themselves. But because of your work in the world, people can see possibilities that they never saw before.
Yeah, look at the new opportunities out there. That's right. Don't let the past color our present or our future. Let the past stay in it. It's a great, good memories. It's important, but don't let that come in and take over today. Yeah. Yeah.
So Joe, if someone wants to join the club, is it really like going to the gym kind of club membership, or what is really going, signing up for the club?
Yeah, no, it's kind of a virtual club, Rick. I don't have a membership fee or dues or anything like that. It's going to the website and signing up and being on my mailing list, and I'm continuing to evolve and offer different different resources for people. But it's really taking advantage of, if you go to the club, you can sign up and get my 9 tips for successful aging. That's a free PDF download. You can do that. And once you're on the list, I send out announcements every week about my latest podcast. And then I do newsletters once a month. I also have an option for people to sign up for some one-on-one coaching if they have some questions, if they're feeling stuck, if they're blocked in some ways. Maybe they had a recent disappointment and they want a little help, and I'm available to do that, the one-on-one coaching. I also love to do presentations, so there's a tab on my website to book me for speaking gigs, senior groups, retirement homes, aging organizations, any consumer group. So there's no formal membership. It's really, like I said, a virtual membership. I've been doing that a few years now, and I said I love it. I'm just having a lot of fun with it, because it's just it's another vehicle for me to kind of do my thing, and that's fun.
I'm over here having a fantasy about co-hosting a call with you weekly, bringing an audience into a live event where people bring their stories, their questions, their I don't know what to say, their insights, their challenges, all of it.
Yeah.
And And what do you think about that?
I think that's great. I think that's great. When I started doing my podcast, for the first year and a half, it was with Voice America, which was it was a live radio show. I did that for 50 or 60 episodes, and we could have callers, and they would phone in or email questions, and that was a lot of fun because we could engage back and forth. Then I got away from that, and just right now I'm doing the recorded podcast, so I lose that live interaction. But I'd love to be a part of that. I think it's super because people have a lot of questions. They respond to something that they hear, and what's the story here? What should I believe? What's the truth? And so just that opportunity to engage with others, I think that'd be awesome.
Great. Monica and I will fantasize together afterwards and then we'll reach
Sure.
out. But one of the things I'm aware of is that everybody wants to know you because everybody's aging and everybody wants to know, how do I do it in such a way that I don't turn into a vegetable, so that I can be functional as long as I can be functional and then maybe no longer exist once I'm no longer functional. But
Yeah.
people want to know you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the saying is we want to die young, as old as possible. I think it was Ashley Montague, that anthropologist, die young, as old as possible. So
Yeah.
that's my goal. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I so appreciate you and what you're up to in the world and the gift that you bring to all of us, but certainly to our elders. Thank you for
Thank
that.
you. You're most welcome, Rick. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to share some of my, my mindset about aging too. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing everything, and thank you for what you're doing in the world for our elders. Thank you.
You're welcome, Monica. Thank you again for the invitation.